Views inside of Layer are just unique ways to view data within a category. So if we're looking at this category here called product specs, you can see that I have a list of items showing up in my category, and we can create views that show me subsets of those items in different ways. So the first kind of aspect of views that's important to know is the filtering, sorting, and field configurations for views. So first, I can show specific fields or edit the visible fields within a view by clicking on this Edit Fields button. And this is where I can show information from the elements or hide information from the elements. And you can see here that now my power requirement column is hidden and my quantity and Revit model is shown. We can create sorting rules that sort these items based on specific rules. So for example, let's say I want to sort this by unit cost. And after that, let's sort it by item tag. So you can create specific rules for sorting the data inside of a view. Lastly, we can create filtering configurations that filter the elements based on them matching this filter criteria or not. So for example, let's say that I only want to show tables that have been approved. I can first start with a rule that says where the type is table. And you can see that now it shows me just a subset of those tables. And then I can add an additional filter rule, and I can say, and where the status contains approved. And so now I have these three items, but as elements change and meet these filter criteria, they will show up in this configuration, and others that don't match the filtering criteria any longer will disappear. So the first aspect of configuring views is editing the visible fields and defining the sorting and filtering rules. I can create a view to keep these configurations by clicking on this button here. So we can either save this to the existing view, which is defined here. We're already looking at an existing view, or I can save this as a new view. And so I'm going to click Save as a new view. And you can see that it now creates a new view for me inside of Layer. So I can come into this view now and edit its settings. And I'm just going to call this products. We'll say table products that are approved. There we go. So now every time somebody comes back to this view, they're only going to see table products that are approved. The second aspect of views is beyond kind of the first, which is filtering, sorting, and visible fields, is the type of view that we're displaying the information in. And so far, we've only kind of looked at this table view that lay out these items in rows and columns. Layer actually has a couple other view types that you can display views as. So I'm going to go to the view settings for this view. And right up at the top here, you can see the type of view that I'm looking at is a table. I can change this view type. And you can see here is a list of all of the different view types that we allow. So again, the first is this table layout, what's more tabular view. But we also have a model view where you can use a Revit model to overlay these items on top of a model. We have a gallery view, which is kind of these cards. We have a form view, which allows you to design forms to collect data that gets inserted into this category. We have drawing views that allow you to upload PDFs or CAD drawings and overlay data in this category on top of them. And lastly, we have a document view that allows you to create deliverables from your category data as well. So to start, let's just choose a gallery view, and I'm going to change this view type. And we'll save those changes. And so now you can see that it's laying these items out. It has the same filtering, sorting, and field rules but it's laying these items out in more of a card view. And so I can then go and configure this further and say, okay, well, the card image for this gallery, I want to use the product image. And maybe we want to show less fields, like we'll remove the product images and the item tag, the model, and the cut sheet. Okay, so these are kind of my cards, and all those configuration changes I just made, I can save back to the view by clicking the Save button. So now every time I refresh this page, it's going to show me this card view of the items that meet the filtering requirements and are sorted based on the rules I gave it. Now, there are also some additional view settings that we can talk about here. For any view, we can click on the view options here, and you can see that we have a few different settings that we can choose down here that I'm going to talk about. Any view inside of Layer can be favorited. When you favorite a view, it's going to show up in your sidebar here under your favorites. Now, I can come down and favorite other views in my sidebar just by clicking the star, and they'll show up here in my favorites list. To unfavorite them, I can just click. Views also, though, allow you to define the visibility for this view. So you can see that by default, this view is set up to be default visible. And what that means is that anybody who's added to this project, it's automatically going to show up in their list of views underneath the category. So for review, we have our product specs category, and directly underneath of that, we have our list of views that are views of that category. Here's that view that I just created. And again, if it's set to default visibility, that means it's going to show up here for every single user of the project. If I set the visibility to everyone, that just means that anybody can see that this view is available and join or access this view optionally, but it's not going to show up in their list by default. And so I'll show you quickly what that looks like. So for any category, I can come in to the category itself and I can manage its views. And you can see here that most of these are default visibility, but this one right here is the one that I made just available to everyone. And what I can do is I can actually remove this from my side menu, and you can see it no longer shows up in my product specs. By default, everyone has that view available, but it won't show up in their menu unless they add it to their menu. So to do that, I can come back to Manage Views. I can either click Add and add it to my side menu right away, or I can click on the view to look at it here. And if this is something that I want to keep, I can hit Add. And now you can see it shows up in my sidebar here. Okay, going back into my view settings, the third option is a Just Me view. And what this means is that no one else can access this view except for me. That doesn't mean that someone couldn't create the same view under their account and access it. It's just no one can access the way that this view is set up except for me. So if I toggle back to everyone, you'll notice that this area here for user access is where I can automatically choose who else should be shown this view. I can add and remove people to this view, and it's going to show up or disappear from their side menu based on their presence in this user access list. And if I choose default, that user access is going to state that this view will be visible to all users and can't be hidden. Now, if we come down here, scroll down a little bit, you can see that all of the filtering, sorting, and field configurations are available in this view editor, this view settings as well. All additional settings for the view also show up here at the bottom. Any changes I make here, I can click Save, and those will be saved back to that view for everyone who has access to this view. Okay, so let's talk now about the different types of views that are available. We talked through the different views that are available, and I'm just going to go through a summary of each one really quickly because in future lessons, we're going to dive into detail on each one of these view types. So I'm going to go to this product specs category and I create a new view. and we'll take a look at some of these. You can see down here are all of my view types that are available: table, form, drawing, document, gallery, model. I've shown you what table looks like, which is more of just the tabular view. We've looked at gallery view as well, but then I want to talk about these other four and what configuration options they have. I have some of these preset in another category in this project that I'm going to walk through. So we're going to look at this room datasheets category, and you can see here I've got a view called table view, and then I have a view for gallery view, document views, form view, drawing view, model view. Table view is what we've seen before, and it's just a table layout of each one of these individual items. When I click on it, it's going to open up the item in this sidebar. The gallery view is also something that we saw, and we know how to customize those. If I click on these items, it's going to open it up in the sidebar as well. The drawing view actually allows us to upload a set of drawings, or PDF set or CAD drawings, that we can start to overlay information on top of. So, for example, in this case, we want to create a markup that links to a room data sheet here. And so I'm going to click on this link to existing button, and we'll draw a rectangle that highlights this room. And I can tie it to a specific room data sheet in my category. This can be used for all kinds of purposes, including doing punch lists, site observations, and many other use cases as well. But once I tie it to that classroom, you'll see that it'll actually note where it's located on the plan, and it now is tied to all of my room types for this classroom. When I click on this item again, it's going to open up. It knows it's connected to that classroom room data sheet. And if I click on this item, it's going to do the same thing. I think I have a different one here. Conference is tied to the conference room data sheet. So in a nutshell, that's how drawing views work. We will get into more detail in a future lesson. Moving on here to model view. Model view is very similar to drawing view, except it's using our Revit model as kind of a base for the overlay. So I have my actual 3D model, and I can quickly place references to an existing item or create a new item by clicking on the button and placing the object. So you can see it's now tied to this door. Now, we're looking at a model view that's in a non-Revit category, meaning that the items inside of the room data sheets are not necessarily connected to a Revit instance. But if we come down to our model categories here, model view has some additional functionality. So if I pull up my furniture category, you can see that each one of these items actually is an instance inside of my Revit model where I can see where it's located. And every model category has a model view created automatically, where inside of this category, I can quickly ghost or hide everything that's not a part of this category, and we can cluster all of those elements together. If I wanted to create a configuration that showed me only my seating options or like chairs in this cluster view, I could do that by adding a filter, and I could say where the name contains chair. There we go. And what I can do is I can actually save this as a new view, and I can rename this and say model view of chairs clustered. So every time I come back to this view, it's only going to show me elements in this category that are chairs in a clustered view. And you can see it shows up now in my side panel, and I can mark that as a favorite and it'll show up top here. We will dive deeper into model view in a future lesson, but I just want you to be aware at this point of some of the things it can do. Next, we're going to touch on really quickly form view. And so again, going back to this room data sheets table, we could create a form view and edit the actual form to drag and drop fields onto this form that then you can share with others and have them enter data for you. So for example, if I publish this form, I can now share it and I can turn on a secret link, or I can embed it directly in like a SharePoint site or something like that. And when we open it up, it's going to open up a public view, publicly accessible view where people can fill in the details of this form, and those details will get sent directly to your layer category. So there's lots of applications for this, but in this case, you might just be collecting information from the customer and you want to pull that into your project. You can do that via form view. And again, we'll touch in more detail on form view later in a future lesson. Lastly, we're going to talk about document view. And document view is an incredibly powerful view type in that it basically takes the data within this category and inserts it into a document template or layout. So here you can see that basically we have a page layout for a room data sheet form that's inserting all the data from these room data sheets directly into the page. And the reason we're looking at the classroom room data sheet is because down here, that's the element we're focused on. But we can quickly toggle to the next element, and you can see the layout doesn't change, but the data inside of the document is what's being updated. So as I toggle between these items, you can see that the data is live updating in the document. Now, I can then export this to a PDF, and it'll look exactly like it does here on my page. All of these items are hyperlinked. So for example, if I click on the net assignable square foot here, I can edit these values and you can see that it'll live change in my document as well. So it's really easy to define kind of your layout and then not have to think about it again as you create new items. The best part about this view type is that you can actually edit every aspect of this with our drag and drop document builder. So if I hit edit document, you'll see that it opens up my building blocks that I can use to build out a document. For example, I can throw in my references block into my document, and wherever we place it, it's going to pull in the details for that item. So I think we have a couple of classrooms. You can see it shows the thumbnails of those items. And I can configure every aspect of that off to the right-hand side here. We can also configure all of the details about what columns of information we want to show in this document. And when you make this change, it's changing it for every single element in the category. So all the changes you make just have to be made once and then are applied across the entire category when I publish those changes. We'll talk more about document view in future lessons. And the last thing I'll reference with document view is the fact that we looked at kind of a page by page, element by element layout before, but this is an example of a summary document view where we're able to basically, for the entire category of room data sheets, drop a summary table of information and decide what columns of information we want to show on the sheet. So you can design these documents to spit out a summary, and we can even add filtering and sorting rules to this. So maybe I only want to show room data sheets where the name starts with, we can define those filtering and sorting rules here, and then export this to a shareable PDF that we can share. Okay, the last thing I want to share about views is the ability to share them with people outside of your project. So I can actually come up to this view options menu and we can click on share view. And what this allows me to do is to turn on a secret link that displays the data inside of this view and only the data inside of this view in a publicly accessible page. So when I share this link, you can see this is essentially what the end user is going to see, is all of these items. And when I click on them, they can see all of that item's details. Now, they can't make edits to any of this information, but they can view anything that's present in the view. There is plenty more to cover with views, but views are going to make up a good portion of some of the next lessons that we're going to touch on when we dive into more advanced use cases of layers. So watch for those coming up in future sessions.